In February of 1957, in a quiet, wooded area in the Fox Chase neighborhood of Philadelphia, a young college student was checking the muskrat traps he had set. As he walked through the underbrush, he spotted something out of place. It was a large cardboard box, the kind a new appliance might come in, discarded in the woods. Cautious but curious, he approached it. When he looked inside, he was met with a sight so grim and so heartbreaking that it would go on to haunt the city of Philadelphia for the next 65 years. Inside the box lay the body of a small, unclothed boy between 4 and 6 years old. He was bruised and malnourished, but he had been recently bathed and his hair had been crudely cut. There was no identification, no clues to who he was or how he got there. This was the beginning of one of America's most profound cold cases. The decades-long, desperate search for the identity of the boy who would come to be known only as the boy in the box, or America's unknown child. But before we start our story, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any of our new, incredible stories. To understand why this case became such an enduring and impenetrable mystery, we must first step into the world of police work and forensic science as it existed in the 1950s. This was an era before DNA testing, before national computerized databases, before the sophisticated tools that modern detectives take for granted. When a body was found, identification relied on a handful of traditional methods: fingerprints, dental records, and visual identification by family or friends. If a victim had no prior criminal record, no dental history on file, and no one came forward to claim them, they could easily become a ghost, a John or Jane Doe, whose life story was a complete blank. The investigators of the Philadelphia Police Department, who were assigned this case in 1957, were some of the best in the country, but they were about to come up against a wall of silence that would stand for more than half a century. The initial investigation was one of the largest in the city's history. The crime scene was meticulously processed. The box itself provided the first clue. It was a packing box for a bassinet, a type of baby cradle that had been purchased from a local J.C. Penney department store. But thousands of these bassinets had been sold, and tracing this specific box proved to be impossible. The medical examiner determined that the boy was severely malnourished, and his body was covered in small scars and bruises, suggesting a life of abuse and neglect. Yet, paradoxically, he was also clean. Someone had bathed and cared for him shortly before his death. His blonde hair had been recently and crudely cut. Who would abuse a child, yet also wash him? The contradictions were baffling. The police launched an unprecedented publicity campaign to identify the boy. They took the heartbreaking step of releasing a post-mortem photograph of the boy, dressed and sitting in a chair, hoping that someone, somewhere, would recognize his face. The image was haunting. His posters were plastered all over Philadelphia and the surrounding states. In a truly massive effort, the city enclosed a flyer with the boy's picture and description inside every single gas bill that was sent out to Philadelphia residents. His face entered nearly every home in the city. The story was front-page news. Detectives followed up on hundreds and then thousands of tips and leads. They checked the records of every orphanage, foster home, and hospital in the region, but nothing. It was as if the boy had never existed. No parent, no relative, no neighbor, no school teacher ever came forward to say, "I know that child." The silence was absolute and chilling. As the years turned into decades, the case grew colder, but it was never forgotten. It became a piece of Philadelphia folklore, a defining civic mystery that was passed down from one generation of detectives to the next. The original investigators retired, handing their thick, dog-eared case files to younger detectives who became equally obsessed with giving the boy back his name. The case attracted the attention of citizen detectives and forensic experts from all over the world. A group of retired police officers and investigators called the Vidocq Society, who specialize in solving cold cases, took on the boy in the box as one of their signature cases, dedicating thousands of hours to re-examining the evidence. Over the decades, a number of theories emerged, some more plausible than others. One major theory centered on a nearby foster home. A woman came forward claiming that her abusive mother, who ran the foster home, had purchased the boy in the 1950s and had subjected him to horrific abuse, eventually killing him accidentally and dumping his body in the box. The story was detailed and compelling, but investigators could never find enough corroborating evidence to prove it. Another theory involved a woman known only as M, who claimed she had witnessed her mother purchase the boy and keep him in the basement, and that she was present when he died. This lead also consumed years of investigation, but ultimately led to a dead end. Every promising lead seemed to dissolve into rumor and speculation. In 1998, with the advent of early DNA technology, the boy's body was exhumed from his grave in a potter's field, where his tombstone simply read, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." Investigators were able to extract a DNA sample, but when they ran it through the national DNA databases, there were no matches. The technology was still in its infancy, and the trail went cold once more. The boy was reburied, and it seemed as though his identity was destined to remain a mystery forever. A heartbreaking symbol of a life that was lived and lost in complete anonymity. But in the 21st century, another scientific revolution was about to give the case one last desperate chance. This new hope came from the field of forensic genealogy. It's a revolutionary technique that combines DNA analysis with traditional genealogical research. Instead of looking for an exact match in a criminal database, investigators upload the victim's DNA profile to public genealogy websites like GEDmatch or Ancestry DNA, sites where millions of people have voluntarily submitted their own DNA to find relatives and build their family trees. The goal is not to find the person themselves, but to find a relative, a second cousin, a third cousin, a distant ancestor who shares a segment of their DNA. Once a distant relative is found, genealogists can then begin the painstaking work of building out that person's family tree, moving forward through time, generation by generation, until they can pinpoint the specific branch of the family where the unknown person must belong. It is incredibly complex work, but it has been used to solve dozens of cold cases, including identifying the infamous Golden State Killer. In 2019, with a court order, the boy in the box was exhumed for a second and final time. Scientists at a specialized lab took the old DNA samples and used cutting-edge techniques to build a complete genetic profile suitable for genealogical comparison. The profile was uploaded. The hunt for America's unknown child had entered its final high-tech chapter. The team of forensic genealogists now held the key. For the first time, they had a clean, complete DNA profile of the boy. They uploaded this genetic fingerprint to vast public genealogy databases. Then they began the long and patient wait. This new type of investigation is like searching for a single person in a forest of millions of family trees. The hope was not to find an exact match for the boy himself, but to find a distant leaf on a distant branch, second, third, or even fourth cousin who had submitted their own DNA and shared a common ancestor with the unknown child. After months of searching and cross-referencing, they got a hit. It wasn't a close relative, but it was a start. They had found a match on the boy's maternal side. This is where the painstaking, traditional detective work began, now guided by the power of genetics. The genealogists took the name of this distant cousin and began to build their family tree, working backwards through time using birth certificates, marriage licenses, census data, and obituaries. They were mapping out a family's entire history. As they built this maternal family tree, they began to look for women who were of childbearing age in the Philadelphia area in the mid-1950s. They narrowed down the possibilities until they had a likely candidate for the boy's mother. They then repeated the entire laborious process on the boy's paternal side. Eventually identifying his likely father, they now had the names of the two people who were almost certainly the parents of the boy in the box. With these names, they were able to obtain a crucial document, the boy's original birth certificate. After 65 years of silence, the boy finally had a name. On a cold December day in 2022, the Philadelphia Police Department held a press conference that was broadcast around the world. The city, and indeed the nation, had waited for this moment for over 6 decades. The police commissioner stepped up to the podium. She spoke of the generations of detectives who had worked tirelessly on the case, of the public who had never forgotten the boy, and of the revolutionary science that had finally broken the wall of silence. And then she said the words that so many had longed to hear. She announced that America's unknown child, the boy in the box, had been identified. His name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli. He was born on January 13th, 1953. The revelation of his name was a profoundly emotional moment. A boy who had only ever been a symbol of tragedy, a nameless face on a poster, was now finally a person. He was Joseph. The investigation had given him back his humanity. With his identity confirmed, the focus of the case shifted immediately from "Who is he?" to the second, darker question, "What happened to him?" The police were now able to reveal more details about his family. They confirmed that Joseph had been born into a prominent local family. Both of his parents were now deceased, but he had living siblings. In another heartbreaking twist, the police confirmed that these living siblings had no idea their brother had ever existed. This suggests a story of a secret child, born outside of a marriage or hidden from the rest of the family for reasons we may never fully know. The police have stated that they know what happened to Joseph, but that the details of the investigation remain confidential. It is still an active homicide investigation. The abuse and malnourishment he suffered point to a dark and tragic home life, but who was responsible? And why was his existence kept a secret? The full truth of his short, sad life may be a secret that died with his parents. But the work of the investigators provided something that is perhaps just as important as a conviction in a courtroom. It provided justice for Joseph himself. In January of 2023, a new headstone was placed on his grave. For 65 years, his grave had been a memorial to an anonymous victim. The tombstone now bears his real name. It reads, Joseph Augustus Zarelli, and beneath his name, a simple, powerful epitaph that had been on the previous stone, but now carries a new weight. America's unknown child has been crossed out and replaced with the words, America's known child. The search was over. The story of the boy in the box is a powerful and enduring saga. It is a story of a tragedy that captured the heart of a city and refused to be forgotten. It is a testament to the incredible dedication of generations of law enforcement officers and investigators who treated the unknown boy as one of their own and never gave up the search for his name. And finally, it is a stunning example of the power of modern science to reach back in time and solve the coldest of cases, to give a voice to the voiceless, and to restore an identity that was stolen. The boy is no longer just a figure in a box, a symbol of a mystery. He is Joseph. And now, finally, after more than half a century of silence, the world can remember him by his name.